Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Netto, your 2021 CCAR president. Welcome to the 100th year of Clark County Association of Realtors, and welcome to the Clark County Association of Realtors membership meeting of 2021. Before we get to our guest speaker today, we have a few things to cover. One, we are excited to announce that CCAR has partnered with Thrive Real Estate Education is going to, we are going to offer to our members as part of your CCAR dues, 24 CE hours of online CE credited classes per year. That is 80% of what is required to renew your license in the state of Washington. We've also been able to negotiate CE credit for our members that also hold Oregon licenses. So to sign up, please go to ccrealtors.com, education, thrive. We are also currently planning our Rpac auction, which will be online this year with the live event scheduled for Friday, May 7th. The silent auction will go live online Monday, May 3rd at 1 p.m. and will end on Friday, May 7th at 12 p.m. The silent auction is free to all members. The live online auction will be $25 to attend and will include a tequila party pack to get you in the mood for this Cinco de Mayo themed event, courtesy of Director's Mortgage. And, you know, it's no secret that we are facing legislative hurdles this year that could have detrimental impact on our housing industry and on our members. So with your support, Rpac can promote the election of pro-realtor candidates and support issues that advance the interest of our industry and our clients. So it's the only political action committee in the country that is organized by realtors to promote and protect the American dream of home ownership. So now we're going to hear from a few of our members that will tell us what Rpac has recently done for their businesses and their clients.
One of the reasons I invest in Rpac is to help us in our industry, and one of the things last year that was being attempted was a B&O tax that would have affected every realtor, and we were able to advocate with our Rpac investment dollars to keep that B&O tax, which was a 20% tax, to keep real estate out of that. That is such an important and significant thing for us to help protect us in that regard.
Thank you to the Rpac Leadership Committee who advocated on behalf of the realtors so that we could be considered essential services. With over 10,000 active deals across Washington State at the beginning of the pandemic, they immediately realized that we were needed and that we needed to be in person to help our clients. And not only did they advocate on our behalf, but they have continuously kept us informed of the status of where we are with the pandemic, among many other issues, so that we in turn can keep the community that we serve informed so that they can make the best decisions along the way.
Rpac, we had a great year considering all the challenges. We worked really hard and we've made a lot of progress, including developing a strong position that we can take to our legislatures with an agenda about increasing housing opportunities for all, including increasing housing opportunities for people of color.
So Rpac is really important, guys. So please get online and do that auction. And then finally, the annual charity golf tournament for our foundation will be replaced by Give More 24 Community Day of Giving in September. Our local Realtor Foundation has been able to give over $120,000 to nonprofits in our community in the past 4 years through the generosity of our members. Even without our largest fundraiser, the golf tournament, we were still able to give $30,000 last November because of Give More 24, as well as other programs like Amazon Smile and Fred Meyer's Rewards. These programs create a passive income stream that doesn't cost you anything. Both programs give a percentage of what you spend to the charity of your choice, and we hope that you will consider the Realtor Foundation as your choice. Here are a few words from some of the organizations that received these grants last November.
I'm Rebecca Blaisdell, the Foundation Board President. I would like to congratulate all of the 17 organizations receiving grants today.
Every dollar that you guys donate to us goes directly to the kids, and we're just trying to make a difference in our community.
Thank you to the Clark County Realtor Foundation. We're so excited to receive this grant.
This grant may well impact over 3,000 children. Thank you, Realtors, for giving us this grant.
CDM would like to thank the Clark County Realtors Foundation for this grant.
Want to say thank you very much to the Clark County Realtors Foundation for this generous grant.
We're just so thankful for this grant.
We're very grateful for the opportunity to improve the learning environment of our program.
And thank you so much to Realtors to giving us this award.
We thank you so much. We love our Realtors.
We're very grateful for the tremendous support that you provide us.
Thank you for the grants that will break the communication barriers among deaf and hard of hearing community members.
My name is Karen Krejcia, and I'm Executive Director and co-founder of Autism Empowerment. We are so grateful for the grant that you awarded to our organization. Your support helps us to continue to promote the good. And in a year like this, promoting the good is a really awesome thing. So thank you so much for supporting Autism Empowerment and Autism Starts Kids Care Club.
Thank you to the Clark County Association of Realtors. We were thrilled to be chosen. Thank you to all of you for your donation. And our motto is, we are defenders of potential. And because you have invested in Big Brothers, Big Sisters, you are also defenders of potential, the potential of youth.
On behalf of our board and staff and our volunteers, we just want to thank the Clark County Association of Realtors so much for this opportunity and this gift. We will be able to offer our kids our programming virtually. Thank you so much for believing in the work that we're doing with youth in our community, and congratulations to all the recipients. During this time, it means so much to us.
To learn more, you can go to the website ccrealtors.com, Realtor Foundation. And the Realtor Foundation's Board of Directors is still discussing some more options for this year, so please keep an eye out for any changes in events. I know that there are some really fun things in the works. So now I would like to present today's featured speaker. Kurt von Wasmuth joined RMLS in 1999 as a help desk technician. Through hard work and determination, he's now the president and CEO of the RMLS. Here today to talk about the weird and unexpected ways the global pandemic fixed the world, please join me in welcoming Kurt von Wasmuth.
Thank you very much, Denise, and thank you, Clark County Association of Realtors. I really appreciate any chance that I get to address our subscribers. This presentation that I'm going to give isn't all that weird. I traditionally give a presentation to the RMLS Board of Directors, and it's not uncommon for me to give that same presentation to our associations. And so what you're going to see today is the same presentation that I gave to the Board of Directors at our leadership retreat at the end of January. So to set the stage for this presentation, I want you to cast your minds back to around August. It was deep summer, and it began to occur to me that I was about to stand up and give the same presentation to my board of directors that every MLS CEO was going to give to their boards. And it was going to be something lame along the lines of, here's how we responded to the global pandemic. And then we would go through the same list that everyone did. Our classes went online and staff started working from home, and we got creative with lockboxes. And honestly, I couldn't get behind that. I can't stand those years. They don't happen often, but they do happen routinely where everybody's heading in the same direction. And in those situations, I kind of like to take a left turn. I don't like doing it the same way everyone else does, so I like to go out on a limb. And that's what today's presentation will be. I'm a little bit over my skis, and there's some of the information I'm going to provide you is a little bit outside of my specialty, but I think that's okay sometimes, especially in a year as weird as 2020 was. So I can promise you this right off the bat: I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus. I'm not going to talk about the number of cases or the number of deaths. I'm not even going to talk about the way that it impacted the economy, except maybe tangentially. I'm not interested in the direct effects that the coronavirus had on the world. I'm more interested in the indirect effects. And I think that if you take a step back and you look at the last year's worth of effort, there's actually some weird and unexpected ways that the coronavirus may have improved the world a little bit. So we're going to have a spectrum of information. On one hand, we're going to have information that's entertaining. We're going to slowly turn into information that really only a realtor cares about. And we're going to end with information that really only an RMLS subscriber is interested in. And we're going to bring it home right at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. I want you all to know that it all started with the turtles. It turns out I was reading an article way back in, say, April, that pointed out that in India, there may be as many as 200,000 extra turtles that made it into the wild because of the coronavirus. And the reason for that is actually quite simple, but not obvious. The shutdown in India made it so that people weren't walking around. And in India, there's so many turtles laying eggs on the beach that people walking around have a tendency to trample on those eggs. They also have a tendency, those people who are having picnics or whatever on the beach, have a tendency to bring wild dogs, and the wild dogs eat the eggs. But without the people there, the wild dogs weren't there, and a tremendous number of turtles hatched compared to previous years. Once hatched, they actually made it to the ocean, because you see, a turtle at night follows the brightest light that it can find, which should be the moon. But in some cases, it might be the metropolitan area behind them, or the freeway, or the bright lights that are driving by. At which point, this little innocent turtle paddles off into its untimely demise instead of going to the ocean. And so what they're saying is maybe as many as 200,000 extra turtles made it to the ocean in India. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? I wonder if there's other instances of good news. And it turns out turtles remained in the good news. We had exactly the same thing reported in Florida, as veterinarians are reporting far fewer boat strikes on turtles because there's far fewer boats driving around. Far fewer turtles are getting hooks and nets and fishing equipment caught in them. Far fewer turtles are getting caught up in beach furniture. And there's a number of reasons that the vets in Florida are saying the number of turtles is going way up in our region. For different reasons, but the same effect. People are staying home and there's more turtles. It turns out that's exactly the case in Thailand, where there's a species of turtle that was endangered, and they're asking now, is it even endangered anymore? So many of them made it into the wild, they have to question that. And then you find out that it's the same in Grenada, in Sri Lanka, in Nicaragua, in Mexico. All over the area where turtles are populated, you've got tremendous increase in the number of turtles. Well, isn't that weird? Humans get an infectious disease, and the big winners are turtles? I didn't see that happening, but it turns out that was the case. But it wasn't just turtles. We also had clearer water. Now, this image here is kind of a joke in that this person was tweeting that there were dolphins in the canals at Venice. There aren't really dolphins in the canals at Venice. There are dolphins in some Italian canals, but this is kind of a misnomer. The point is that the water was so clear that people were seeing fish for the first time. The fish were always there. It was just that the boats that were driving around were stirring up silt and sediment and making the water too murky for people to see the fish that were always there. But now that has settled, and people are celebrating clear water all over the globe. It's not just Venice, it's rivers and it's lakes, and in some cases off the coast of some countries is noticeably clearer water. It also turns out that the air got cleaner for a little while. I found this information from the University of Washington, go Huskies, that starts, University of Washington actually took weekly data for individual pollutant particles in the air and divvied them up by state so that we could see which states were more polluted than would be expected or less polluted than would be expected. And you can see it starts February 26th through March 3rd. Oregon is a little bit more polluted than would be expected, but Washington is a little bit less. You can see the more blue a state is, the less polluted it is. The more orangey brown, the more polluted it is. So as we move forward, you'll see we get through March. We're both a little bit more polluted than you would expect. Just about average, March 11th through 17th. But the week of the shutdown, March 18th through 24, Washington is significantly more polluted than one would expect, and Oregon is slightly more polluted than one would expect. But watch what happens as we roll through the weeks after the shutdown. I'm going to do this relatively quickly, but you can see that both Oregon and Washington, as you start to get into April, now we're heading into May, you can see we're dramatically less polluted than one would expect for week after week after week. And in fact, by the time we get to July 1st, we have 11 weeks of being less polluted than one would have expected, given all the other variables such as weather and other things that could, temperature apparently affects it. There's a million things that could affect it. So for 11 weeks, we were less polluted than one would have expected. Now, you might say, well, what happens in July and August and September? They haven't gotten that far yet. They haven't released that data. But I think 11 weeks in a row is enough to prove the point. I also don't think anyone's going to argue with me, because it's not that contentious a point, because after all, people started commuting differently. I mean, everyone was working from home, right? So, of course, the air would be cleaner. The problem is that every time I tell someone that, yeah, everyone's working from home and there's significantly less traffic, somebody pushes back and says, well, there's just as much traffic as there ever was before the shutdown. And it turns out they're right. I turned to our friends at INRIX, who do our drive time searching, and they showed me this graph from streetlight data. You can see this blue line represents the US total vehicles miles traveled. That's VMT. It's just the number of cars on the road multiplied by the number of miles that they drive. It's something that gets tracked year over year over year, every single day and weekly. You can get all of this information. And you can see this giant drop-off that happened right when everybody started working from home. It was the largest drop in VMT that this country has ever seen, 41% drop. However, look at what happened after that. VMT rises and rises and rises throughout the rest of the summer, and in fact, INRIX reports to me that VMT is at 91% of traffic that it was in 2019. So what does that tell you? Well, for some reason, everyone's working from home, but they're all out driving around? That doesn't make any sense. So I tried to find a reason for that, and I think I found a few. One, in July, it was reported that there is 25% fewer bicyclists biking to work in both Portland and Seattle. So perhaps some people that used to bike to work now drive. I don't think that's a big enough number. I think it's probably tied more to the fact that people that used to take public transportation don't. They now drive. So this graph here represents the number of people on Max and West combined. And you can see before the shutdown, we were averaging just under 2 million users a week. Then the shutdown happened, and right now we're averaging about 750,000 users a week. So for ease of math, let's say it's somewhere around a third of the people are riding Max and Wes compared to prior to the shutdown. And of course that makes sense, doesn't it? In fact, nationwide, they say that there might be as much as a 90% drop in the use of public transportation because people don't want to be trapped in an enclosed area with people that may have an infectious disease. Now, the other thing is that carpooling is down dramatically. But it's hard to get numbers on carpooling because so many carpools just happen organically. You don't sign up with the state or register anywhere. You just sort of do it. But to support that idea, both Uber and Lyft are down as much as 80% compared to 2019 numbers, which does give you an indication that, yeah, I think carpooling is down dramatically. So we now have another category, people that used to carpool are now driving. One of the things that I found is this graph right here. The yellow graph yellow line represents last year's traffic. The blue line represents this year's traffic. Now I know up in the upper left it says San Francisco. I get it, but this information is true for San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Seattle. It doesn't matter which major metropolitan area you check, you get exactly the same information. And what it appears is that nationwide, we seem to have lost our morning commute, or at least a portion of it. The morning commute is significantly less than it was prior to the shutdown. But after the morning commute, things are actually worse. There's more cars on the road between, let's say, 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. than there was last year, or the year before, or the year before. Well, maybe that could be explained. Maybe that's people who are working from home in the morning and then going in at 10 a.m. Perhaps it's people that are going in for lunch meetings. But it's probably more the fact that people that used to take public transportation are now driving. And they have different schedules. They're not the 8 to 5. They have less routine schedules, and they're getting on the road at a different time. Everybody gets to enjoy the same ridiculous afternoon commute. It's just that it's spread out differently. So maybe we have different people on the road than we had before. The people that used to drive are working from home, and now there's different people that are clogging up our freeways. I'll tell you one thing, if it is different people, that might explain the fact that we've stopped smashing into each other. Maybe these people are a little bit more skittish. Maybe they're more careful. It turns out that in August, I believe, I found a list of the top 25 most improved intersections in the United States of America. And Portland made the list with a 28% drop at the intersection of I-84 and Sandy Boulevard. On a national list, we made the list at number 13. Now, even more important than that is the fact that the Oregon Department of Transportation says that fatalities due to collisions dropped 41% in 2020 compared to 2019. So perhaps there's different people on the road. But if it is different people, even if it's the same people, people are better at driving. They're safer. There's far fewer collisions and there's far fewer fatalities. But perhaps it's not the people that are on the road. Perhaps it's that the people that are driving are getting a little bit more sleep. You see, Fitbit in April, or at the end of March, put out an article that was basically a cry for help that said, are you guys seeing what we're seeing? Our users are getting more sleep. And I couldn't find anyone answering them, so they answered themselves in July and said, yup, not only is everyone getting more sleep, but they're getting better sleep. People's sleep scores improved from 72 up to 83. It turns out that later in the year, Withings, which is a company that also makes smart watches, but they also make heart monitoring equipment, they make smart scales, they make all kinds of stuff, said exactly the same thing. They said that they found that their users were sleeping about 12 minutes more every night after going to bed 11 minutes more or later and getting up 26 minutes later than usual. Well, maybe that's tied to commute. Without a morning commute, maybe people can sleep in a little bit longer, and if they know they can sleep in longer, maybe they stay up a little bit later. All of that was confirmed by the University of Colorado at Boulder, who said they studied 2,000 of their students. And they said their students were sleeping 30 minutes more every weeknight, 24 minutes more on the weekend than prior to the shutdown. Now, what's interesting is if you break it up by age group, Fitbit says if you're on the West Coast and you're between the ages of 18 and 29, you're getting about 15 minutes more sleep, let's say, on average. If you're in your 30s or 40s, you're only getting about 10 minutes more sleep. Whereas if you're between the ages of 50 and 64, you're getting about 5 minutes more sleep. We've got 3 in Oregon, 4 in California, and 5 in Washington. What's interesting is that you're getting 1 minute less sleep if you're in the state of Arizona. And then if you're over the age of 65, you're not getting any more sleep on the West Coast than you did prior to the shutdown. If you're in the state of Arizona or Florida, you're getting dramatically less sleep than you used to. But on the West Coast, you're doing exactly the same, which does sort of lend itself to the fact that maybe that's tied to commute, because most people over 65, perhaps they're retired. They don't have the commute that they used to. Or maybe they're just not as worried about their commute once you're over 65. But maybe it's not tied to the commute. Maybe it's the fact that people have a lot less to worry about. And why do they have less to worry? Their credit scores are on the rise. It turns out everyone's credit score went up during a global pandemic. I was walking around the corporate office here, and we have 2 staff that come into the corporate office in order to do the mail and attend to lock boxes and that sort of thing. And I overheard a conversation where employee number 1 says, "Have you noticed it costs exactly the same amount to get a bottle of vodka as it does for 1 drink on a Saturday night?" And employee number 2 said, "Yes, that's one of the reasons I have a little bit more spending cash." And employee number 1 shot back, "Yeah, I've noticed that my credit score is on the rise." And off I trundle right back to my office. I didn't even take part in the conversation. I just overheard that, ran back to my office, did a little bit of research, and it turns out everyone's credit score went on the rise on average. In July, FICO credit scores reached an all-time high of 711 points compared to 704 1 year prior. Now in Washington, everybody had the same 7-point increase on average. But what's interesting is the state of Oregon is in a 5-way tie for second place as the credit score increased 9 points from 718 points up to 727 points. And it's just, people don't have as much to do. There's a little bit more spending cash. People can pay their bills on time, and they have a little bit more cash to be flexible with. As if to prove that, when Halloween came around, we didn't have the haunted houses. We had significantly less trick-or-treating, but we saw an increase in the amount of money spent on decorating. Every American spent $92.12 on average this year, which is the highest amount they've spent on decorations ever. Also, the demand for Christmas trees went up as there were far fewer large gatherings, many more small gatherings, and people were buying more and more and more Christmas trees, and demand for Christmas trees was higher than before, and it went up 7% compared to the previous year. So at this point, everyone's got a little bit cleaner water and clearer air. Their credit scores are on the rise and they're sleeping a little better. Their commute is a little bit better, or at least different. What could they possibly need? Well, apparently they were lonely. We went out and bought a bunch of pandemic pets during this global pandemic. In fact, in Oregon, it is reported by the Oregon Humane Society that they were at one point receiving 50 applications per dog. Like that, the demand is huge. The big winner in this category is pandemic puppies, but there were also pandemic kittens. There was huge rise in the number of people that were getting birds and fish. And let's face it, folks, probably a bunch of turtles as well. Since the population of turtles went up so much, there's probably a bunch of pandemic turtles. At the end of March, we're not even talking later in the year. Just at the end of March, there was a 12% increase in pet supply sales. We're talking about food and kibble. We're talking about harnesses and bedding and medication. It's a very large category. And by the end of March, it was already up 12% as people were out buying pets. Now that's going to become very important in a little bit, but I want to point out that pet sale or pet supply sales isn't the only area that increased during the global pandemic. There are a number of niche industries that have done very well. We've all heard the horror stories, and in fact, you can't really turn on the news without hearing some of the depressing news about hotels and sports arenas and performance arts and restaurants and bars, movie production, right? Hollywood is on its ear. Theaters, amusement parks, casinos. There are a bunch of tales of woe, but there are also some niche industries that are seeing a boom. Over here on the left, puzzles and games. Puzzle and game manufacturers are not only seeing the highest sales they've ever seen, they're also selling to a younger audience than they ever have before. We also have drive-in theaters. There's huge investments going into brand new drive-in theaters as the American consumer is looking for something that they can do, some form of activity that doesn't expose them to increased risk. You also have garden supplies. Garden supplies are up 220% compared to 2019's numbers. And you're not just talking about seeds and livestock and stuff like that. You're talking about tools, rakes and shovels and clippers and all kinds of stuff. Now this next one, fashion, this is sort of a joke one. The fashion industry in and of itself is decimated. There is no such thing as high fashion. That's just starting to come back now. The fashion industry in general relies on retail, and retail space is disappearing. In 2020, there were 12,200 retail store closures, which emptied 159 million square feet. In essence, we lost 1.4% of all retail space in 2020, and we're due to lose more. And that hurts the fashion industry because people want to touch the fabric. They want to try it on. And so the fashion industry is down, with a few notable exceptions. Blankets. The sale of blankets is up 4 times, and the sale of sweatpants is up 80% over last year. People want to be comfortable. They're gonna lounge around in their comfy clothes under a blanket while working. An interesting one that surprised me is that our friends at Pendleton Woolen Mills reports that their only category of fashion that has increased over the last year is something called the lamb's wool westerly cardigan sweater, best known as the sweater worn by Jeff Bridges in The Big Lebowski, a movie that at this point is 20 years old. But if people are working from home, they need a certain amount of chill. They want to remain calm. And so they start channeling their inner Big Lebowski by wearing a cream-colored sweater, I suppose. I'm not making this up. The facts are there. If we move on, telemedicine, dramatically up. So globally, all of our healthcare systems and individual clinicians are all looking for ways to address your broken arm or your rash or whatever it is virtually, instead of having you go in and touch substances and breathe recycled air and that sort of thing. So telemedicine has gone up dramatically, but also telepsych has gone up, or as it's called, teletherapy. And we're talking about sites like BetterHelp, Talkspace, Teledoc, Amwell. There's a slew of teletherapy sites out there with very good reason. It turns out that in 2019, roughly 3% of Americans were affected by something called globalized anxiety disorder, or GAD. According to the poll by the United States Census Bureau, in May of 2020, a staggering 30% of Americans were experiencing symptoms of GAD, and that was only 3 months into the pandemic. By October, that number seems to have hovered around 33%, according to the American Psychiatry Association. Excuse me. So teletherapy is through the roof. We also have online learning. We have sites like the Khan Academy, which, in case you didn't notice, was just given a $5 million check from Elon Musk because he wants them to expand the offerings that they offer for free. You also have places like Udemy and Coursera, Lynda, Skillshare, Udacity. There's a ton of online learning going on, not just because people have extra time at home, but also perhaps they're teaching their children subjects that they know nothing about, and they're looking for a little bit of extra help. Or perhaps in teaching their children, they realized, I had no idea I was so into history, and they start exploring their own course of interest. A lot of it is learning languages. Language learning is up dramatically through the pandemic, and as we know, or at least we've learned, people working from home are about 18% more productive, and with that extra time, they're looking for ways to sharpen their skills and get better and tackle a new project, that sort of thing. Now I want to take a second and I want to pause here because something magical just happened. We have fully moved out of the entertaining part of my presentation, and we are right smack dab in the middle of information that a realtor should be taking notes on. As if to demonstrate that, 3 of these subjects directly speak to your job as a realtor, and 3 of them are just entertainment. Let's take a look. Puzzles and games. Well, that's throwaway data. You don't care that more people are buying puzzles and games. Drive-in theaters, that's entertaining, but it's not the end of the world. And fashion has literally nothing to do with you. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just saying the fashion industry doesn't have anything to do with your job. However, garden supplies, telemedicine, and online learning all speak directly to your job, which is to put people in new homes. And let's explore how that is. First, people's backyards are now an oasis. The backyard has never been more important in the home search than it is right now. And I know that's a big statement. I'm going to prove that to you later in the presentation. One of the things that I enjoyed the most about this global pandemic was learning new facts. Deck construction in 2020 was up 275% compared to 2019. Hiring landscapers was up 238%, and fence construction, we all know what makes good neighbors, great fences. Fence construction is up 144%. When you compare 2020 to 2019. People were spending a lot more time in their backyards and more money. I also found really fun articles like this one. People are losing their clucking minds over backyard chickens. And also, move over pandemic puppies, COVID chickens are now on the rise. See, I told you pandemic puppies was a thing. And it turns out some people enjoy chickens as pets. One of my favorite phrases throughout 2020 was the number of times I could find articles that referred to the phrase, people are trading traffic for chickens. All of that is to say that people are looking at their backyards differently. They're starting to use them sort of utilitarian in some cases. They want to create their own food in the shape of eggs in this case, but they're also looking for more garden space. They want their backyard to be a safe haven. It's an oasis. Not only for enjoyment, but also for growing food. There was a study done by LendingTree in 2020, and this was a study of people who were already buying a house. These aren't potential homeowners. These are people that were already in the process. And they asked those people, why? Why are you moving in the middle of a pandemic? And the number one answer, 27% of people said that they would like a yard so that they can go outside but not be around other people. We're going to talk about the rest of this survey in a little bit, but I want to drive that point home. The backyard has never been more important than it is right now. And maybe, I am loath to tell realtors how to do their jobs, but maybe it's more important than ever that you spend a little bit more time thinking about the backyard. Is this backyard particularly suited to looking like a second living room, right? If so, throw out a low-cost area rug and an umbrella and some cheap furniture. It doesn't have to be done, just spark the imagination, because the American consumer is looking for things and sometimes they don't really know what it is they're looking for. Sometimes it just takes that little spark to get them thinking, ooh, I like this property over that one because of X. There's a number of things that you could do. Perhaps spend a little bit more time describing the raised gardens that already exist at that property, right? In a day and age where they're becoming more and more and more important, maybe that's what we do. I've got other ideas for you too. The other thing that we did, people started a home improvement frenzy during the global pandemic because of course it makes sense. They're at home more and they're thinking about their homes in a different way. According to Max Anderson, who's the chief economist at Porch.com, which is a website that does like home improvement information, he said this is an all-time high in terms of measured history in the United States. We're seeing the highest levels of home improvement spending that we have ever seen. In fact, Google searches related to home improvement went up 50% in 2020 compared to 2019. And that might not sound like a lot, but honestly, that means 350 million searches happened in the second quarter related to home improvement just in the second quarter of 2020. That's a lot. But it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, we had a lot of things going on. Gyms were shutting down, for instance, and people are looking for space to throw out their yoga mat and get their yoga on. They've got treadmills and stationary bikes. You've probably heard of the company Peloton. Peloton sales tripled in the first quarter of 2020. And by the holiday season, sales of Peloton were so high that they had trouble meeting demands. They were running out of supplies to make them. People buy their Pelotons and then they've got to have a place to put them because you buy it first and then you think about your house. And it turns out people need a little bit of space for home gyms. They're spending a lot of money on their homes. So if you look at this graph, we've got orange is Home Depot. Home Depot sales for the second quarter of 2020 were $38.1 billion. That was up 23.4% from 2019. Lowe's, their largest competitor is in blue, reported $27.3 billion in sales, compared to 21 billion for the same period. And by the way, that's just the second period. The third quarter looked exactly the same, with both companies having 20+% growth year over year. Now the thing is that you can put a ton of money into improving the space that you're in, but sometimes that's not enough. It turns out nearly 1/2 of Americans are considering a move during the global pandemic. 1/2? Well, 47% of people, according to that LendingTree survey, or a different LendingTree survey, and according to a Zillow survey, it was 46% of people are considering a move during the global pandemic. And that got me thinking, is there any way that I can show that your customers are thinking of moving? And it turns out I think that I can. So here we have this graph right here. This gray area represents last year's search results page views on Realtor.com. I have always referred to this chart as the dreaming chart. This is the one that shows that people are searching in their area. When somebody pulls out, let's say they're watching a television show and they half-mindedly pull out their iPad and they start searching Realtor.com and scrolling through results. That's what this is. That's just results. And look at what happened. It was pretty boring. Usually, basically the same numbers I'm used to seeing right through March, kind of picked up in April. In May and June, it really shot up. In May and June, people started to think, what if I moved? What if this isn't the place for me? Now that I'm considering other things, what if I started looking around to see what I really could get? But that's just dreaming. The next slide is planning. Because this is listing detail page views. You're no longer scrolling through an entire neighborhood's worth of data. You're actually looking at the same 3 or 4 properties over and over and over again. And look at the difference. You go through March and April, and we actually have fewer page views than we did the year before. It doesn't start to shoot up until July and August. All of a sudden, detailed page views go through the roof because people have moved from what I like to call the dreaming phase into the planning phase. They're really starting to focus in on some properties that they may be interested, and they're getting very close to calling you at that point. But why? Well, let's go back to that lending tree survey. You remember 27% of people said they wanted a yard. Well, the second most popular answer, they need a bigger kitchen because they're dining out less. Well, yeah, restaurants are closed, so they would be dining out less. And even if restaurants are open, there seems to be a sentiment that, we might be safer at home. So people are looking for bigger kitchens. They're also looking for more office space because they're working from home or their children are learning remotely. I take issue with this. I think that this is actually the second most popular answer, but we'll get to that in a second. If you look at the rest of the survey, you will see that there is one of the most popular answers, a pool to provide some outdoor entertainment to beat the heat. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, that's one of the things that I said. The backyard is becoming more popular. Bill Walker, who's the COO at a company called Cocoon, it's another web resource for home improvements, said that pools are becoming more popular in areas where they simply weren't popular before. Well, of course, because people are starting to make use of that backyard like they never have before. Moving down the list, they want a home gym. Well, we talked about that. We got that. They want more square footage since everyone is home more. That's true, they do, but I'm going to alter that in 1 second. They do want more square footage. And then dedicated distance learning space, well, I take issue. I think that should be combined with office space because that's basically the same thing. And I think that makes that the second most important answer. In fact, the company that we used to help us with our equipment, the camera and the monitors that we need to do presentations like this and to connect with our board of directors, they went through and they told me that there are more people asking for Cat 6 cabling in their houses than ever before. You see, in 2019, Wi-Fi was just fine. But in 2020, video conferencing has gotten so common that people need fast, reliable internet, and they're starting to get their houses rewired with Cat 6 cabling. It used to be Cat 5. Apparently they're asking for Cat 6 now for gigabit. I don't really understand. I just know that they need wires. Now, let's talk about the fact that Americans are buying bigger houses because they need more space. But the most important part, they need more rooms. Credit is on the rise. We already talked about that. And people are buying new houses, but they're especially buying bigger houses with more rooms. Between the start of the coronavirus pandemic in March and the end of November, sales of single-family detached homes priced above $1 million jumped up 28.8% nationwide. And I thought, well, that's great. I mean, that's an interesting statistic. What does that mean for our neck of the woods? So I asked RMLS Web, how many houses sold above $1 million in 2019 and 20? And it turns out in 2019, we had exactly 1,000 houses sell more than $1 million. But in 2020, we had 1,510, which makes a 51% increase. We dwarfed the 28% increase nationwide, almost doubling it at 51%. Now on the flip side, single-family homes that were priced below $200,000 saw their contracts fall by 13.7% nationwide, down 13.7%. So what did we see? We saw a 19.4% decrease in houses below $200,000. Now I know some of you are dying to point out that part of this 19.4% decrease is because there just aren't any. They just don't exist anymore. And the same argument could be said for the other end. Our average and median sale price are increasing so rapidly that of course there's going to be fewer on the low end, and of course there's going to be more on the high end. But not that many. Not a 51% increase in houses over $1 million, and not 19.4% decrease on the low end. There's still demand for those houses. But on average, everyone's looking for a slightly bigger house. So with people spending more time at home because they're working remotely, homeowners are realizing they're in need of more square footage. They need better home offices, they need a gym, outdoor space, all the stuff that we talked about. But all of that is coming at a higher and a steeper price tag. They're starting to really put some importance on some things that they didn't before. We're going to talk about that in a second. According to Redfin, the typical home that sold in the 4 weeks ending August 16th was 3.7% larger than the year before. On average in this nation, that's 1,772 square foot house. Now, we know that every single year when we look at sales, everyone's always selling a little bit larger houses. The house has been getting bigger year over year over year. But let's put this in perspective. On average, when you take the years 2015 through 2019, the average house that sold grew by 0.4% every year. So you compare that with the 3.7% growth in 1 year that we had in 2020, shows that people are looking for bigger homes. They need a little bit more space. To further illustrate, our average square foot was 0.3% from 2018 to 19. That's about the growth that we see between 0.3 and 0.4%, which is the average for the nation. But we were up 1.7% from 2019 into 2020. So even locally, people are looking for much larger homes than they have historically. I don't know if you noticed this, but in June, Zillow basically announced a press release that said that the open floor plan is dead. Nobody's looking for open floor plans anymore, and it makes sense. I mean, if you think about the reasons that people want a larger house, it's for things like teletherapy. You know what you need when you're doing therapy? You need a door that you can close and walls, because no one has ever wanted an audience while doing therapy. You know what you need when you're working out? A door. No one has ever valued doors as much as we do right now. We need doors and we need walls and we need segmented spaces to be able to accomplish the things that we have to do in our house in 2020 and 21 that we just didn't have to prior to that. So if you think about it, if you have a listing right now, and perhaps it's a 5-bedroom house, maybe stage one of them as a classroom, right? Maybe go out on a limb and again, put that spark in someone's head and say, you know what, I could use that extra space for my workouts, or I could use that extra space for whatever. We have reached the part of the presentation that every MLS CEO dreads. I can't stand talking about the market in front of realtors because you actually know the market better than I do. You talk about it with your clients all the time, and let's face it, you know what's going on. You are a part of it. However, I thought I would put something together. Instead of just reading you market action, which honestly, all of you can see market action. You can read that as well as I can. I put together a little bit of, let's say, unique numbers. I took the greater Portland metro area and included all of the Vancouver metropolitan area in it to get some interesting stats. In 2019, we had 38,000 new listings. We were down 7.6% in 2020. That probably doesn't surprise you. You saw that coming. Here's the fun one though. In 2019, average days on market, I'm talking about CDOM here, so that's cumulative days on market, was 22. Down to a whopping 9 in 2020. That means that we lost 2 weeks in our cumulative days on market in the giant extended metropolitan area. Our median list price, which was already outrageously high at pushing 400,000, crossed that threshold and reached 425,000, up 6.2% in 2020. Now that's a strong market. That's a seller's market like you wouldn't believe. Like that's a very strong seller's market. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the market, but I would be derelict if I didn't mention it at this point because I need to mention it later on. There is one market that I am sort of interested in. Did anyone notice that RMLS hit an all-time high in subscribers in 2020? It kind of took me by surprise. It turns out at the end of 2020, we hit 14,894 subscribers inside of RMLS, which surpassed our high that we hit way back in 2007. It surpassed it by exactly 40 people. We had 650 new subscribers, not new subscribers, we had an increase of 650 subscribers year over year, or a 4.8% increase. Now, normally when I'm talking to the board of directors, at this point I say, gang, hold on. This number is about to come crashing down around our ears because we've been fluttering around 15,000 subscribers. Historically, we just can't seem to crash through that ceiling. So this number is about to come down dramatically. But this year, I'm changing my tune. I'm going to sing a different song. And here's why. I think that this number goes through 15,000 subscribers for the first time ever, simply because of culture. I'm sure that you've seen it, but it doesn't matter if you're watching Home and Garden Television or the Hallmark Channel or Bravo. There's a flood of shows like Flip or Flop and Fixer Upper, Love It or List It, $1 Million Listing, Property Brothers, House Hunters, a million of them. And all of them are teaching the consumer two things. One, real estate is cool and hip. And two, they make it look stupid easy. Now we know that the job of a realtor is not easy, but there aren't shows proving that to the American consumer. So as the unemployment rate is high, especially from areas that normally lead to increased growth at a multiple listing service, and that would be like the retail industry. We already talked about that's on its ear. The hospitality industry, yes, hotels, resorts, all of that are down. Those two pull directly into multiple listing services, as when they lose their job, they think, I'm going to try to become a realtor. So I bet this number goes up. For the first time in years and years and years, I'll bet that. Now, this number might go down for one reason and one reason only, and that's because I'm predicting it to go up. If I predict it to go down, apparently it goes up. So now if I predict it to go up, it has to come down. So either way, I kind of win, because if this doesn't pass 15,000, I will have been right for the past 4 years. If it does, I'm right because I claimed it today. I win. Either way, real estate is popular and cool these days, and I think that number goes up. So let's talk about what you did during the global pandemic. I think this is the part where we take all of that information and we combine it into what happened in this area. So I took saved searches and prospects inside of RMLS Web, just saved searches and prospects, and we parsed out the area number involved in all of those saved searches and prospects, and here's what we found. Compared to 2019, we had some very big winners. Tillamook County is up 122%. Astoria up 109%. Clatsop County 106%. Seaside, which is more than one area, but combined makes 105%, and Hood River is at 103%. Now, every single area inside of RMLS Web was up compared to 2019, so on this slide there are no losers. Everyone was up. But there are some areas that are up dramatically less than everyone else. And I'm not cherry picking. These are the top 5 in the list, and these are the bottom 5. So I've got Lane County up 45%, but that's the Eugene and Springfield area. All of the Eugene-Springfield area was at the very bottom of the list. Next up to that was a tie. Anything north of north of Vancouver proper, so you're talking about Philida and Salmon Creek and that area, still up, but only up 50%. The Beaverton area also only up 50%. Area 145, which is like Estacada and Damascus, that area, that's up 51%. So you can see, I don't know if any of you were watching Brian Buffini's bold predictions, but one of the things that he predicted was that in 2020, people were going to cast a wider net. They were going to start looking at properties that they simply didn't consider before. Maybe areas that they were thinking about retiring in. He didn't have any data to back that up, but I think maybe we do. Like, I think that's what this is showing, is that people are willing to look at the coast. They're willing to look in Hood River. They're willing to look in places that aren't in the I-5 corridor like they have historically. Now, let's not talk about geography. Let's look at the way you have been using our fields. So one of the things, lot size and acres are both up dramatically. So there were 4,236 more searches in RMLS Web that used lot size, and 3,250 more searches that used acres compared to 2019. But isn't that what we've been talking about? Like, the backyard is more important than it ever has been before, and this proves it. People are searching for that information because that's what they value. The third one, which kind of caught me by surprise, is ADU, yes, no. Additional dwelling unit, yes, no. Do we have a place for mom and dad? Since we all have to hunker down together, maybe we all do it and we get a place for them to live as well. Or the kids are unemployed, maybe they come and live with us if we can find a place with an additional dwelling unit. The fourth one, 1,117 more searches for basement. Now this one, I get it, like I see the allure, because people are thinking, well, if we had a basement, maybe that could be like an additional learning space for the kids, or maybe we could turn it into like a very nice office or a couple of spaces. But I would question, is that what they're really looking for? Do they really want a basement, or are they just looking for more space? Are they just looking to divvy that up a little differently? And maybe they're considering basement because they had one as a kid, and that's what they associate with a bonus room or a rec room or something like that. I find that fascinating. Now, unlike the last slide, this is not all winners, right? Where parking is down 3,103 searches. Stories is down 3,833. And year built, the biggest loser, is down almost 4,000 searches. What this is telling me is that in 2020, if the backyard is there, and we've got some other amenities that we are starting to treasure more than we ever have before, we don't care if there's parking. We don't care how many stories it is. And honestly, it could be built in the Middle Ages. It doesn't matter. All we want are the things that we're focused on right now. Now, what's interesting, virtual tours I expected to be a massive winner in 2020. But as usual, I was wrong. Virtual tours only increased 15%. It wasn't a dramatic increase in the number of virtual tours, but then again, with 9 days on market, who's got time for a virtual tour? Like the market didn't support this. I think it would have been tremendous had it not been for the cumulative days on market that we saw. You walk down the street, trip, accidentally sell a listing, you don't need a virtual tour in that market. The next one that I thought would go up was the number of photos in each listing. You can see in 2019, we averaged 24 photos per listing. And it took a global pandemic to push that average up to 25. So my prediction that photos were going to get more important turned out to be a little bit off. They're just as important as they ever have been, and in fact, maybe that proves that they can't get any more important. Now, we've covered a lot of information, and now is the time for us to listen and get ready to react. You see, in 2020, the world caught a glimpse of cleaner air and clearer water. The American consumer is getting more sleep and better sleep. Ostensibly, they're driving more safely. What are they doing? They're sitting around in their comfy clothes and they're watching home and garden television while dreaming of a new house. They're actually planning to purchase a house. And you as a realtor need to know that. All the while, their credit scores are rising, they have a little bit of extra spending cash, combined with historically low interest rates, means that really fuels their desire for a bigger, better backyard, because they picked up a bunch of pandemic puppies and turtles that they didn't have before. They need a place to put their Peloton. They need a larger, better kitchen, and they need more rooms in their house with better, faster, reliable internet connections. All of this is creating what can only add to what could be described as a perfect storm, where we're looking at 9 days cumulative days on market and a $425,000 median sales price, and realtors, more properties selling over $1 million than we have ever seen before. You, in particular, stand to have an extraordinary year in 2021. Now, I know the world has always changed rapidly, but now it seems that it's changing a little differently than it has before. And it's more important now than ever as realtors listen to the consumer. We may have identified some trends in here, but there's absolutely no way we identified all of them. What is it that the consumer is looking for? And what is it that they value more than they did in 2019? And just as important as that, the MLS has to listen to you. Do you have the fields that you need? Do you have the values and the features inside of those fields? And if you have the features and the values inside of those fields, have our modules changed? Have some of our search parameters like drive time become less important because everybody's working at home now? Or did they become more important? Because as people cast a wider net, they still want to be within 45 minutes of a hospital. All of these things, we need to listen and we need to get ready to react. I want to thank you for taking the last almost hour out of your life to listen to me ramble on about some of the weird and unexpected ways that the global pandemic may have fixed the world. Thank you very much.
Well, Kurt, thank you very much. Who would have known that a human virus would have such a positive effect on turtles and raise the credit scores and get us some more sleep? Great information, great insights. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. You always bring us great information and you are so appreciated. Thank you
so much.
Thank you. And everyone, CCAR staff may have been spending more time in their backyards and getting more sleep these days, but they have not stopped working on members' behalf during these uncertain times. Here are some of the benefits that help you do what you do. And it'll only take just a minute here.
The Clark County Association of Realtors is a professional organization for those actively engaged in the real estate industry. It ties real estate professionals into a powerful force for mutual support and success. With over 2,000 members, CCAR is the voice of real estate in Southwest Washington. We offer online CE credit classes for all your licensing requirement in both Washington and Oregon, industry news, dispute resolution, and network opportunities throughout the year. Our membership and services are designed to give you options to make prudent and practical decisions for your real estate business. Advocacy for realtors and their clients, which include guiding policies that preserve and extend the right to own, transfer, and use real property. Realtors follow a code of ethics, which sets them apart from other licensed real estate agents. Need more information? Give us a call, 360-695-5980, or email us your questions. Email ccar@ccrealtors.com. Website www.ccrealtors.com.
And one more thing before we close. We are seeking nominations for the first quarter Leaders in Professionalism Award. So please go to ccrealtors.com, membership awards, and you'll see Leaders in Professionalism. The winners will be granted the title of CCAR Leader in Professionalism, and they're awarded 1 quarter of paid RMLS dues and the rights to use the CCAR Leaders in Professionalism logo on their personal marketing materials, in print, online, or other ways that they want to. So please take a few minutes, think about who you have had a great transaction with, and nominate that great realtor that goes above and beyond to show their professionalism for this great award. With that, thank you all for attending, and this meeting is now adjourned.